Joining us today, star and writer of Allison, Mike O Dowd, and its director, Ross Carey. So thanks for coming in. If you'll pardon the pun, can you give us the broad strokes of Allison?
So
I see what you did there.
So basically it's about this fella. He's living sort of a hermit life, a hermit-like existence, just stuck in his bedroom the whole time. Has aspirations of being this great short story writer, but a constant procrastinator, like doesn't have the drive, isn't pushing himself hard enough, like it's constantly making up, I suppose, you call it a plan for success, but never really following through with it. So he mostly ends up getting stuck in a spiral of getting into arguments with people on Facebook and watching a lot of porn.
Okay.
And then one day he's going through like his social media page, and he sees something that startles him, and that is he sees that his ex-flatmate Allison is in a relationship, and basically that sort of triggers the entire story, or the crux of the story.
Yeah, and obviously this is like it's a thorny enough subject. While you were writing it, was it sort of, did you want to write something kind of confrontational about porn in society and people's attitudes towards it, or what was the sort of motivation for tackling the subject?
I wanted to write, I suppose, something confrontational. For actually, it's a very personal story. That's the thing. So it was more about kind of confronting my own, I suppose, demons or whatever you'd like to call them, and just kind of, as I was writing it, like, it started off very much a sort of how these things usually start. When you're writing, when they're in their initial stages, they're like a why me sort of thing, and then you're kind of developing it, and you're kind of going like, okay, how can I make this more universal, like, without taking away the personality from it, like, and this is how this is in general my writing process, just kind of seeing how can I fit the themes around this story, and how I can sort of weave a natural, I suppose, character arc into all this I suppose experience I have in my head. Like,
well, it's interesting because that's almost an analogy for social media, where it's like it's universal but it's also deeply personal. There's like that kind of tension between the two.
It's also just it's quite stark more than confrontational. I think it is just blunt. It just presents the reality of this kind of life as it is, and there's humor and there's tragedy and there's really, really bleak moments and there's really, really optimistic moments. Like, I think the idea of any time you head into loneliness or the male ego or incel culture, it's more often in the context of like sociopaths and killers and very, very, very like
extreme
but cartoonish depictions of it. That's not necessarily the blunt reality of 90% of cases. And people who find themselves in this position.
What would the challenge be of taking a one-man show where you're dealing with, like, it's hard to dramatize people writing and online stuff, so how was the challenge of directing, making that sort of something that sings, kind of?
Well, we were constantly moving between like too much energy and too little energy. Like, at one stage there was a scene where Mike was sitting down typing, and I was like, okay, you got to physicalize this. So then we had Mike like running up and down, like ruminating, and then stopping to type, and then running up and down. But in the end we just found a kind of an in-between. Where he would just bring the slightest accent to what he's doing. Like, he would stand over the keys, he would type what he has to say, and he would just give his reaction. We found that going too far, too dramatic was not realistic. Too mute was not realistic. We found the in-between. But also, it gets the writing and the scrolling out of the way pretty quickly. That those are just functions in the story. He doesn't spend a lot. He pitches stories, but we don't spend an awful lot of time entering into the solitary world of the writer, which doesn't, as we all know, doesn't make for a great
good drama.
story.
Actually, at the heart of it, really, it's just a story about, I suppose, heartbreak. Really, his first heartbreak. Just this girl he was so infatuated with, and like he's recounting that story, and you know, it's we're trying to let the audience kind of see for themselves, like, you know, is he kind of, you know, would you feel sorry for him, or do you think he's a bit of a loser and everything, and he kind of set himself up to fail and everything, and that's really, I suppose, what we're trying to convey. It's also just, essentially, as I said, it was a very personal story. It's essentially me kicking the ass of my early 20s, early to mid 20s self, I suppose, even though he's like 28 in the actual thing, just to bring closer to my own age. Like,
I do think that, like, there's a sort of we all play out dramas online anyway, even if that doesn't look like you're having an argument with someone, you're doing something that's kind of intense online, you know, even when you're just sitting there typing, we're still playing out dramas in that world. So obviously that's where the conflict comes from in your story as well.
Yes, well, more so, I suppose, just from the... I think he kind of explains at one point that he actually actively goes looking to start fights on social media, and it's basically like you can kind of tell from, like, without giving too much away, what I'm trying to convey with that is, like, he's not in a good place in his life. You know, if he's actively looking for conflict, and if he's actively trying to bury other suppressed feelings and emotions, and but
sometimes the difference between someone online and someone in real life is so stark, you know.
Oh, very much so.
It's a completely different persona. You have this, like, keyboard warrior cloak around you, where you seem so much more impervious to, like, fear or pain, and then you meet the actual person. It's like, oh, this is a balanced individual. You know, not the extremes of their character that you see in these snippets online.
I think that's the thing, actually, because we actually end up projecting our own inner monologue for a lot of the stuff we write on Facebook, even though, like, this is something, like, you know, it took me a long time to learn as well. Like, you know, don't get into arguments with people on Facebook, because, you know, that person in real life, you're going to have a completely different debate with them. Like, you know, there's going to be less mudslinging for one, and you even get to see kind of glimpses of that in it, where like, when he's actually conversing with people, you know, with normal human beings, like, he's very kind of fidgety, he's very sort of nervous, trying his best to impress people. And then his inner monologue is just full of bile and hatred and just self-loathing, and we explore a lot of that in the play.
I do think the toneless medium of writing as well, people can sound harsher even online when they don't intend to. But tell us, when is it on? How can people see it?
It's going to be on the 6th to the 8th of February in the Cork Arts Theatre. You can book your tickets now. There's like a page. There's a Facebook page, Allison, full stop.
And an event page for this run.
And an event page
itself, which will hopefully continue going forward.
Yeah.
Great. Cool. Thanks for joining us.
No worries.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.